Hi, it's Kim from Body Connections Australia, and as you can tell, I have been getting quite a bit of sun today. I've been out mowing my yard, trying to get all that tidy ready because it's 2 days to go, countdown day 2 until I head in for surgery. So I was out mowing the yard and got way too much sun. But anyway, it'll be down by tomorrow. So today I wanted to talk to you about banking and your banking accounts and making sure that arrangements are put in place and that everything is in order around your banking accounts if you were to die. And there are 3 things I want to talk to you about around that today. So the first is that it's, again, as with your social media and your digital passwords, it's so important that someone knows where you bank, where your bank accounts are, and how they can access them. So when my mother died last year, my parents still received paper bank statements. So it was quite easy for me to go through all of those, get all the bank account numbers, and then figure out whether I needed to apply for probate. And so when I worked out that we did, then I was able to then list, I had all those account numbers, I was able to list them in the application for probate, and it was fine. But that's because my parents are old school. I have not received a paper bank statement in I don't even know how long. So with online banking, everything digitized and people no longer receiving paper statements for the most part, it's really, really important that somebody knows where your bank accounts are and how to get to them. So what I have done, just like I did with my digital passwords, is I have put all of that down, but not on what I'm sending to the people that I would like to have that information. I'm putting all that information in a secure place, and I'm then simply providing instructions on where somebody can find that if they need it. And so if something does happen to me when I'm in hospital and I don't come home, then that information is accessible and someone is able to get that, so that I'm not leaving this huge mess behind and someone's trying to figure out where my bank accounts are and how to even manage those. If I do come home and everything's fine, then obviously, again, as with my digital passwords, all I need to do is change my password for my internet banking and it's done. And then I just continue on. So that's the first thing, is it's so important to make sure that somebody knows where they are. So unless you're planning to list all of your bank accounts in your will, which again, I don't recommend, because if you decide to change banks for any reason, or every time you open or close a bank account, you're going to have to go back and update your will. So again, I recommend, just like when I was saying with the pets, that you don't name your pets in your will. If you're going to include them in your will, that you have them in a separate document that can be put with your other papers and accessed if needed, that your bank accounts don't list them in your will. It's better, I think, to have them in a separate document and then just make sure that someone knows where to find them if they need to. So that's the first tip. The second tip is that it's so important to review your accounts and see if you've got joint accounts, how they're set up. Because depending on how they're set up, again, the minute that a bank knows that someone has died, they will freeze those accounts. So if they are set up as joint accounts and with either party to sign, and that's the way they're set up as a proper joint asset, then they will, once the bank receives the necessary paperwork, they will transfer those accounts to the surviving joint account owner or joint tenant. But if that's not how the accounts are set up, so even if the account is in two names, depending how the signatories are set up, then the other person may not have access to that money. So it's so important. That's tip number 2, is to make sure that you review all of your accounts, especially joint accounts, to see how they're set up, because it's so important that the family members are able to access the money that they need. Because, for example, and I will name the bank, again, my mother died over a year ago. The ANZ Bank has still not closed her accounts and transferred those account balances over to my father as her sole beneficiary, even though they were given a copy of her will and her death certificate back in January this year. It's now December, almost the end of 2022, and they were given a copy of the probate in July, and they still have not dealt with those accounts. So please don't assume that everything's going to go to plan. Please don't assume that everybody is going to do their job and that everything is going to work out. It's so important. That's my second tip, is to please review your accounts. Make sure that your family is going to be able to access money if something happens to you and the bank freezes your accounts until the estate is finalised. So the third thing, that brings me to the third thing, which is, again, the minute that you go to the bank and ask for money to be released to pay for a funeral, they will want the death certificate and they will freeze the accounts straight away. So it's so important, again, to either have a prepaid funeral, which isn't the same as funeral insurance, which I said is, in my opinion, not a good idea, but to have a prepaid funeral so that there's money put aside somewhere else to pay for the funeral. Or again, to make sure that if it's an expected death and you have time to make arrangements and you have a power of attorney, that either the attorney goes and withdraws some money from the account beforehand, or that there's some other way to make sure that you are able to access that money, because the minute the bank knows that someone has died, they will stop all the accounts. And so it's really important that you've prepared and you've thought ahead for what is going to happen and how are people going to be able to access funds in the 6 to 12 months or more in some cases before the bank actually does what they're supposed to do and transfers those accounts over to the people who should be entitled to them as beneficiaries. So they're my 3 tips for today, and I will be back tomorrow with day 1. Until then, much love. Bye.